The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
At that time Jesus said to his disciples, "As were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day when Noah entered the ark. And they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and one left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and one left. Therefore stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Today, my dear friends, as I mentioned at the beginning of this celebration, we are now on the first Sunday of yet another season of Advent. Season of Advent is a time of preparation of 4 weeks for us to celebrate Christmas meaningfully. You know, Christmas is celebrated in so many different ways. The businessmen and women, they're out there making it clear to us the Christmas feast is around the corner. And we ourselves have this tendency of doing things externally in order to feel this time of celebration. So we paint our houses if we can afford it, buy new clothes, do whatever that is decorative. And for us human beings, normally, newness is something that's to be seen outside. A new paint, a new set of chairs, new clothes will make us feel that we are in a time of newness. But when you go deep into ourselves, my dear friends, anything that is externally new is only temporary, because newness or profound newness happens within one's heart and soul. So it is a time of preparing ourselves to receive the Lord who comes into our hearts. That's Jesus who came into this world historically. But the season of Advent is also a time for us to believe and celebrate our faith in the second coming of Christ. Do we know when it is going to happen? None of us know. Where will that be? No one knows. When that will be, there is no answer. But one important thing about receiving the Lord within our hearts and souls means that we as individuals, also as collective communities, we do understand how the Lord comes, how God's hand come into play, how God's presence come alive in our individual lives as well as in our collective life. The first reading today, taken from the book of Prophet Isaiah, goes back to about 700 years before the time of Christ. What was going on then? Because we will listen to Isaiah the prophet in this time that is ahead. In the season of Advent, Isaiah's texts are very strong and very clear. Now, Isaiah was living in Israel at that time when Assyrian kingdom, that was a superpower then, was very powerful. The Assyrian kings had big armies and they were powerful, they were strong, and they could come at any time into the land of Israel. But also there was another superpower, that is the Babylonian kingdom, again had all kinds of armies, and they were powerful. So Israel was a small country with small population and with little skilled men and women at that time in that agricultural setting. So what happened in the land of Israel was the kings at that time, who were most of the time not very brainy, not had much of a vision. They were all doing things for the moment. You buy something and do something and show something. That's what the kings were doing. Isaiah saw that his land of Israel was going towards destruction. The reason being, the kings had all kinds of alliances with Babylonian king as well as with the Assyrian king. So what happened ultimately was that the kings thought, we can play this game. You signed with the Assyrians when it is favorable, and you signed with the Babylonians when that is favorable. But Isaiah, being a man of God, authentic as he was from the very depth of his heart, he felt, as he received God's message, he felt that kings of his time should not do this evil to his land. So therefore, Isaiah says, it is important that we as people of Israel change our minds, change our attitudes, so that a true king can come into our leadership. My dear friends, when you think in terms of what happens in this country today, it is almost the same. We have leaders who have led us into bankruptcy. That goes without saying, because we are in this economic crisis now. Who is responsible? Yes, our leaders. But who is more responsible? It's us, people. Because there is a saying in the science of politics, we always have leaders that we deserve. So Isaiah knew that all these kings were betraying the land and destroying the country because the people were not able to see through what was going on. And even if they saw, even if they were able to understand, majority were silent. But only Isaiah was a man who had the strength within himself to speak up and say, don't do this. And he challenges them. He says, we all will have to depend on God and God alone. That means we have to uphold the values that comes from God. Values of justice, values of compassion, values of fair play, values of upholding what is righteous. So Isaiah's message was, it's enough that we have depended on these stupid leaders. Let us now change our minds, change our ways, and begin a new journey so that our land will have a future. Sometimes when you reflect on these messages of the scriptures, my dear friends, it's so clear that history repeats itself all the time. There have been leaders in many parts of the world, in many countries, who were elected into power by people because people never had an analysis of what they were doing, including us, my dear friends. We have all been taken for a ride for the last so many years by few who are masters of the game and destroyed this country. It goes without saying, we all are in this mud now, but the responsibility is mainly ours. So Isaiah's message then to the people of Israel was, let's change our ways of thinking. Let's change our attitudes. Let's learn to see through. Let's learn to have an analysis of what's going on. Let's learn to be awake so that we will never be taken for a ride again. For us, my dear friends, as Sri Lankans, it is time that we at least ask ourselves, how responsible am I in the mess that this country is in as individuals? How responsible and ignorant have we been in the mess that we are confronted with? As Isaiah says, yes, it's the problem of our leaders, but it's more the problem of all of us. Our stupidity, our lack of analysis, our, in a way, psychological and social slumber that we are in this mess today. The gospel passage again is at a different time, 700 years after the time of Isaiah the prophet. And Jesus Christ, at his time of his own life, he realized what happened 700 years ago during the time of Isaiah, because the Babylonian took over the Israelites and the Assyrians destroyed the land. They had paid for their sins. And now again, it is the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire had taken over the land because they knew the weakness of the kings at that time. So they had all these stooges like Pilate and Herods, because the Herods were, as I have reflected earlier, there were three brothers, three Herod brothers who were ruling the different parts of the land. So now, Jesus knew that what was happening is again the same, 700 years after the time of Isaiah. And so therefore Jesus says, stay awake now. Stay awake means learn to see through so that we may not be taken for a ride. Learn to analyze so that all the evil that is presented to us is never accepted. Stay awake, he says, so that when the end comes, one will be taken and one will be left. What he means is that in this world, ignorance of the people is one of those very deep human instincts that we all have. Human beings live in ignorance. That is why Buddha, in his own philosophy, he said, the main problem of all human beings is that we are ignorant. We see things, but we do not see. We hear things, but we do not hear. We try to understand things, but we do not understand. Ignorance is our main challenge, main problem. So that is why Jesus says, now it's time, at least now, after so many years of a land that is suffering, he says, stay awake. Open your eyes. Open your ears. Live your moment as the Catholic tradition has it. They say, live your life each day as the first day of your life and the last day of your life and as the only day of your life. That's when a person is fully alive to the reality of life itself. Do we live our lives from the depth of our souls, my dear friends? That is when we live awake.